Welcome to FreemasonPodcast.com. I'm your host, Jeff Day, past master of Laurel Lodge number 13, currently a member of Mackenzie River Lodge number 195, ancient free and accepted Masons of Oregon. This is the first of what I plan to be a three-part program discussing the Morgan affair of the 1820s. We have no definitive record of William Morgan being initiated, passed, or raised as a speculative Freemason, but he certainly visited lodges, was willing to assist, gave Masonic talks, and took part in degrees. Some suggest he was an impostor, having lied his way into lodge, but with Morgan many things are uncertain. He was, however, exalted to the degree of Royal Archmason in Western Star Chapter number 33 in Leroy, New York, on May 31st, 1825. He was among those who signed a petition to form a new Royal Arch chapter in his hometown of Batavia. However, objections were raised as to the inclusion of his name on the petition, and it was scratched off so that he would not be included as a charter member of the new chapter. William apparently became bitter over this exclusion and disrespect after all he had done, and turned against the fraternity. In July of 1826, he made it known that he was preparing a manuscript for publication, which he claimed would expose the secrets of Freemasonry. He was aided in his publishing endeavor by David C. Miller, a disaffected entered-apprentice Mason, who worked as a printer and served as editor of the Batavia Advocate. He was also aided by George W. Harris, a silversmith with whom he and Lucinda apparently lived for a time while in Batavia. Some accounts seem to indicate that George lived with the Morgans, but based on George's wealth and the well-documented fact that he later allowed Joseph Smith, Jr., founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, and his family, to stay in his home for 2 months, I suspect George had a habit of offering hospitality to those in need. David Miller hired a man named Oliver Cowdery to help prepare the printer's manuscript for William Morgan's book. This is the same Oliver Cowdery who would later assist Joseph Smith, Jr. in preparing the manuscript for the Book of Mormon, and who would become the first baptized member of Joseph's new religion. As word of Morgan's book spread, several local Masons determined that this publication was to be prevented. On September 8, 1827, a group of 50 or more came together with an object to suppress the work by forcibly procuring the manuscript. An attack upon Miller's printing office was contemplated, and a plot to remove Morgan from Batavia was devised. On September 10th, Nicholas Chesbro and Ebenezer Kingsley went before a magistrate where Kingsley accused Morgan of never returning a borrowed shirt and cravat. A warrant was issued, Morgan was arrested and taken the next morning by stagecoach to Canandaigua. He was discharged, however, after which Chesbro immediately applied for a warrant over a tavern bill debt of about $2. Morgan was put in jail in Canandaigua on the evening of September 11th, 1827. The next evening, Mr. Hall, the jailer, was away, but his wife was approached soon after dark by Lowton Lawson, who asked if William Morgan was there and offered to pay the debt and take him away. Mrs. Hall refused, stating that she did not have the key to the desk and was therefore unable to verify the amount of the debt. She did allow Lawson to have a conversation with Morgan through the bars, in which she said that Morgan agreed to allow Lawson to pay the debt and take him home. But she refused to admit Lawson into the cell for a further private conversation, and she refused to handle the transaction in spite of Morgan's agreement. Lawson left, ostensibly to look for Mr. Hall in town, but returned later with Colonel Sawyer. They were unsuccessful in persuading Mrs. Hall, however, and left for a time, returning again with Chesbro, the man in charge of receiving payment for the debt owed to the owner of the tavern. Mrs. Hall interviewed Chesbro, and, satisfied, went into the house to retrieve the keys. She returned, unlocked the door to Morgan's room. Lawson told him to get himself ready, and they left, Lawson taking Morgan by the arm in what appeared to Mrs. Hall to be a friendly manner. As she was relocking the door of Morgan's room, she heard a cry of "Murder!" She rushed to the front door and saw Lawson, Morgan, and a man called Foster headed east. Morgan apparently struggling to get free. She heard a rapping sound on the curb of the well, heard a cry of "Murder!" once or twice more, the last being in a suppressed tone, and saw a carriage which she knew belonged to a Mr. Hubbard come from a stable west of the jail, passing by in the direction in which the men had gone. It then returned back to the west. It was a bright, moonlit evening, but she could not see the carriage turn about, as a house prevented her view of what transpired further east of the jail. An eyewitness, Richard Wells, testified of more or less the same events, adding that he turned and went up the sidewalk to see what the commotion was, and spoke with Mr. Chesbro, who explained that Morgan had been released once his debt was paid, and that he believed someone had a further warrant to arrest him, and that that was the reason for the outcry. Yet another eyewitness, Willis Turner, stated that Chesbro made a motion as if putting a handkerchief to Morgan's mouth after Morgan's hat had fallen off. Hiram Hubbard, owner of the carriage, testified that he had been asked by a Mr. Coe to drive a party. He said that he did not observe any violence, but was not in a position to observe them in detail. He believed he took in about 5 people into the carriage, none of which were known to him, and was told to take some of them to Rochester. He made several stops along the overnight journey. At Rochester, one person got out of the carriage, and one returned to the carriage which he supposed to be the same person. Then he was asked to continue a little over 3 miles, just past Hanford's, towards the Ridge Road, where he was told to stop. His passengers got out near a piece of woods with no house nearby. He then turned and drove back to Rochester. There was an installation in Lewiston on the 14th. From testimony taken before the grand jury of Niagara, it was apparently known to several people there that William Morgan had been taken to Fort Niagara and confined there, and that a messenger was sent to tell Colonel William King, or the tailor from Lockport, that the man in the fort was making a disturbance. He met with Haig, the tailor, in Lewiston, and delivered his message. Haig said that he would go down there and started off. Another witness before the same grand jury testified that a man had been brought to the fort and confined there in September, and that the prisoner was under charge of an unnamed guard, who placed this witness in care of the man while he went away temporarily. The witness cared for him several days until one morning, believed to be the 19th of September, when he discovered that the man confined in the fort was missing, gone. This witness denied having any hand in getting the person away from the fort. Another witness testified before a grand jury that between 2 and 6 weeks after the abduction of Morgan, the dead body of a man had been found, which had floated up on the beach 1 or 2 miles below Fort Niagara. He, the witness, went to see Colonel King and found him pacing to and fro on the steps of the Frontier House. Doctor, don't you want a subject?
I do not.
There's a body floated on the beach. A coroner's jury is about to be held. It will be buried. You can take it to the fort. You know, there is nobody there but... and you can have any room you please.
The body will not be of any use, as it has probably been spoiled by the water.
Uncle Kelly has summoned me. I told him I had business at Lewiston and could not stay. I'm afraid it is the body of Morgan. Should it prove to be so, we shall hear tonight. You must go tonight and take it up and hide it and take care of it. You must put it where it can never be found.
If you have got into any difficulty, you must work your way out. I will have nothing to do with it.
You must go.
I will not. I will have nothing to do with it.
I guess it is Morgan. It is Morgan. On October 10th, 1827, 5 days after the discovery of the corpse on the shore of Lake Ontario, the coroner, Colonel King's Uncle Kelly, reported it to be the body of a man around 50, 5 foot 8 inches tall, gray hair, 2 teeth missing, and most curiously, a row of double teeth at the front of the jaw. In the frock coat of the corpse was found 4 religious tracts, a scrap of paper reading, September 24th, 1828, Mr. James Webster, and 2 plugs of tobacco. That was all. Cause of death? suffocation by drowning. Join me again next time as William Morgan's wife Lucinda is consulted in an effort to identify the body and further evidence comes to light. If you enjoyed this program, find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. FreemasonPodcast.com